Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another ranking video. In today's video, I am ranking every single Christopher Nolan film from the worst to the best. With the release of the Odyssey just this week, there are now 13 major Christopher Nolan films, all the way ranging from the 1990s until now, today, 2026. There are a lot of movies. I'm only talking about his major releases, anything that was over an hour on his Letterboxd page, and we're going to rank all of them. So if you're new around here and you don't know, I'm trying to watch every single 2026 film. The Odyssey is a brand new film in 2026, and this marks my 100th 2026 release. I timed it exactly for this to be my 100th film, so I am down 100 movies in 2026 so far, and it has been quite the journey. But that being said, let's just jump right into this ranking. So coming in at number 13 is going to be Following. This is Nolan's most guerrilla movie in a lot of senses. It's his first major film. It's over an hour long. It's about 68 minutes long, and it's his first movie that's that long. But this is definitely his most guerrilla film. It's a very close quarters, very claustrophobic in terms of the filmmaking style. It's full black and white. There's no color in this movie. A lot of sequences play out very quickly, and other ones sometimes meander and play out a little too slowly. You've got a pretty generic through line. There's not really any time manipulation or pieces that are out of place or out of order. Everything is relatively flows nicely. It's definitely the least Nolan movie on this list, I would say, other than maybe one more that we'll talk about later. But the reason I think this is my least favorite of all of his films mainly comes down to the fact that this does not have any characters I particularly care about, and it doesn't even have the massive scale, big budget, crazy stuff happening that makes a lot of the other ones better. So this is definitely my least favorite. This is probably the only Nolan film I would say is not great. It's good. I think this is still a solid movie, but it's definitely my least favorite out of his 13 films, and it's just one that I would never revisit again. So now we get into the actual real deal movies. Following is a bit of just kind of his OG film that's hard not to talk about. But now we get into the real deal. So coming in at number 12 is going to be Dunkirk. I know a lot of people really like Dunkirk, but this is definitely my least favorite of all of them. I'm just not big on war movies, and I think Dunkirk doesn't do anything necessarily unique in the genre of being a film set during a war to really isolate it into being one of my favorites. I really like Inglourious Basterds from Quentin Tarantino, but I like that movie because it's about this very weird group of characters that are very eccentric and just different. But in Dunkirk, all of the characters are kind of just your average soldiers doing soldiering things, and you have big aerial fights and massive score drops in these big battles. And it looks really good. It's a very visually excellent movie, and it works and it flows, and the connective tissue is there, and I like the way that the three different stories really connect by the end of the film. But it's definitely my least favorite in terms of a plot level. It's basically just watching the Battle of Dunkirk play out. You're not getting any necessarily crazy character development moments or massive lore revelations with the world building. This is definitely Nolan's most, I would say this is probably his safest movie in terms of digestibility. There's nothing particularly crazy editing wise or time manipulative wise or anything like that. This is definitely his most digestible film, but so I enjoy it, but it's just not my favorite of the films. So coming in at number 11 is going to be Insomnia. This is kind of the forgotten Nolan film. A lot of people forget that this is even a Christopher Nolan movie because it's so drastically different than anything else. Because while Dunkirk doesn't have the weird, editing and time stuff, it does have the huge budget and action and stuff like that. But Insomnia not only has a very streamlined story, I would say, and it's pretty relatively simplistic. It is not in any way out of order or told in a weird way that isolates it. But it does feel stylistically like a Nolan film. You're still getting these very unique close-up visuals on different people's faces so you can really sit with their reactions to information. You're getting a very fantastic performance from both Al Pacino and Robin Williams, which is absolutely what carries this movie and makes it as memorable as it could be. But the big issue with this movie mainly comes down to the fact that it's an adaptation of another movie. I believe there's a foreign film that this is adapted from. I'll have to leave in the comments or the description what movie it is, but this, I believe, is an adaptation of a foreign film, And you can tell kind of through the plot and the way that it's put together that this is so different than anything else Nolan has ever done. And even with his movie prior to this, Memento, it doesn't feel nearly as unique as Memento. And I'm a huge fan of detective thrillers. You'll see I have Memento quite high on this list, but Insomnia is just a little too simplistic for me in terms of the things that I like about Nolan's filmmaking style, and there's a lot of choices here that I feel like I've seen multiple times in other detective movies. Now, as I mentioned though, acting performances are quite stellar. Al Pacino in particular is great in this film. And I also like the set, or like the set design, or like the scene, like the scenery of this movie. It's very different. All of Nolan's films all have kind of their own distinctive visual identity, whether it's the between the huge battles and color schemes or this and that. This movie feels more down to earth. It feels like more of like a Silent Hill kind of atmosphere, this foggy town with lumber mills and different like cabins in the woods, and it's kind of unique. It's pretty cool. It's obviously not creepy, like it's not designed to be scary like a Silent Hill game, but it has that atmosphere to it, and it does add a lot of uniquity to this movie that I think otherwise it would have been losing if it didn't have that atmosphere. Of course, also you're in Alaska where the sun never sets. That's also a big key point of why the detective has insomnia in the first place, so that adds to it as well. But overall, just not my favorite, but it's still quite a solid movie. Alright, moving forward, these movies are the 8 out of 10s, the quite solid. At number 10 is going to be Batman Begins. This is my least favorite of the Batman trilogy, or the Dark Knight trilogy from Nolan. And I know a lot of people usually say The Dark Knight Rises, but there's a lot of things with that movie I really, really enjoy, mainly in terms of the scenery and set design. But here in Batman Begins, I feel like I have a lot of issues with the plot, and the villain in particular. Now, I think Liam Neeson is a strange casting choice for Ra's al Ghul. I don't think he complements Christian Bale's Batman significantly well that someone else could have probably done, especially someone that fits more as Ra's al Ghul could have done. His plan to destroy Gotham feels very forced. It could have been any single villain ever that could have had that plan. It didn't need to be Ra's al Ghul for anything other than just connecting it to Batman's origin story. And I don't know, Maggie Gyllenhaal's not really compelling in this role either. I don't really like her in this or The Dark Knight. She's the only thing I don't really like about The Dark Knight. Um, so you're getting things that the movie's trying to convince you are working, like Bruce and Maggie Gyllenhaal's character together, Christian Bale and Maggie Gyllenhaal together, and they just don't bounce off of each other for me. And their relationship is such an integral part of what makes this movie and the Dark Knight so important to the trilogy, and it just doesn't work. And when you have that combined with the fact that Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul doesn't really work either, you have a movie that is still good. You have a lot of good parts. Obviously, Christian Bale as Batman is great, and just a lot of well done sequences and fight scenes and stuff like that. And it's a very solid movie. Scarecrow, of course, is also quite great as Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow, but I just think this movie loses a little bit of its steam, especially towards the back half when Ra's al Ghul does get revealed as the big villain. But luckily, though, this is still a very solid origin story. You're getting the foundations of Batman and why it's important. And I think having this movie before The Dark Knight, even if the beginning of The Dark Knight was tweaked, makes The Dark Knight a better movie. So I don't hate this movie. I think it's very good. It's still a very good superhero movie. I just prefer a few other superhero films, and I certainly prefer every other Nolan film over this one. Coming in at number 9 is Nolan's most divisive movie, and that is going to be Tenet. A lot of people hate this movie. A lot of people really like it, and I'm somewhere kind of in the middle, leaning towards liking it. Tenet has a lot of cool ideas. I like the idea of having these weapons or like devices that have this reverse polarity effect. And there's a lot of really cool action shots that they do with this sequencing where you're getting combat of one car's driving forward and the other one's driving backwards, and they're moving in the same direction because they're at different times. And it's really cool. It's really well choreographed. It's one of Nolan's coolest in terms of choreography, I believe. The score is also a standout, probably my second favorite Nolan score. Ludwig Göransson is able to build this score that uses instruments that are reversed. Like, he takes the instruments, he plays them, and he reverses the sound of all these instruments. And with all of the sounds reversed, it creates this very unique score that's very different than pretty much any other movie score I've ever heard in my entire life. So you're getting a very unique experience watching the movie in terms of, like I said, that choreography and that score. But what really holds this movie back for me is the plot is a little incoherent at times, and the lead actor, I can't think of what his name is, but the Denzel Washington's son, is not particularly compelling in this role. The main plot of the movie focuses on these objects that are able to kind of manipulate time by moving backwards. And the main villain is trying to use them to create a doomsday device that could reverse the entire existence of planet Earth. And it just doesn't really make sense. Like, the movie never really explains what he's using to actually do it, or like why it's important or why it matters. And it just doesn't really connect, and you just don't get any depth to why things are happening, or like the secret organizations that are in play during the events. Like, you don't really get a grasp of any of those things. And Robert Pattinson, for example, is really doing his best to sell this sidekick character, but you have the lead actor here who, not that he's bad, he's able to absorb exposition and show emotion in certain sequences, and definitely is pretty good in the fight choreography. But his big drawback to his character is that there's this kind of romance subplot that doesn't really work, and it holds the movie back in so many ways. And as I was talking with, the other thing is, this movie is full of exposition. There are so many characters in this movie that exist solely to be exposition dumps of, you need to go here to do this thing exists, and here's why it's important, and go here, do this, here's the plan, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it together. And just these three things keep being said by so many people over and over and over and over and over again. And the movie never just lets you breathe in it. And it's crazy because this movie is 2.5 hours long, and the plot sometimes can become kind of abstract, whereas you're still seeing all these moving pieces, and you're still admiring all of these incredible set pieces and fight sequences and scoring, but you're just losing yourself in the plot. I do think I enjoy it more than Batman Begins, because Batman Begins I just find ultimately sometimes boring. This movie's definitely not boring. There's just issues I have with it, underlying issues that I have with it, that I think make it relatively poorer compared to other Nolan films. Coming in at number 8 is going to be The Dark Knight Rises. This is a movie that I had only seen maybe once when I was younger, and then I actually watched the entire Dark Knight trilogy in a row whenever the Odyssey first got announced. And this movie holds up for me. Holds up very well. I kind of went into this with the prerequisite that, everybody thinks this is the worst one, it's going to be my least favorite. And I was totally wrong. This movie shocked me. In some ways, I think I may enjoy this more than The Dark Knight on just kind of a casual watch. Obviously, I'm ranking this list a little bit both subjective and objective of movie quality mixed with my own personal taste, so it's not quite as high on the list. But Dark Knight Rises is still a very solid movie. I only really have 2 or 3 issues with this movie. Main one is obviously the plot twist of the Al Ghul family being in play in this movie. I think it's kind of overdone, feels very bland, especially because I don't like it in the first movie. It definitely doesn't work here in the third movie. And Catwoman being kind of a bit of a throwaway, I guess. She definitely has narrative purpose, she has substance in the film, Anne Hathaway is great as Catwoman, but I just feel like she's just kind of there for there to be a romance subplot, and it's kind of it. And it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not like I hate it. It's not like it pisses me off and it ruins the movie. Just something that I'm observing. Bane, I think, is pretty great, even though his voice is really silly. I think Tom Hardy's pretty fun in this role. He's got a relatively interesting objective. I like how the city kind of gets taken over, even though it doesn't really make plausible sense as to why. It's still cool. It's very well done. And overall, I just think this is a very solid ending to the trilogy. It wraps up Christian Bale's Batman story very, very well. And in general, I would say this is probably the best superhero trilogy, unless the animated Spider-Verse films are able to really lock in for their last movie. So, very solid, very good movie. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I enjoy The Dark Knight Rises a considerable amount. Coming in at number 7 is the only movie on this list that I don't have a whole lot to say, and that is Inception. I think this movie's pretty fantastic. It's a pretty great movie. It's just not my favorite. It's a little too opaque for me, I would say. And not that I don't mind having to use my brain for a movie, and I don't mind intellectuality in a movie. I enjoy that. I think it's fun most of the time. But here in Inception, you're getting a movie that is very opaque, very, very mind-bending, twisting, and I remember I watched this when I was a little bit younger, so maybe it's a movie that deserves a rewatch and maybe it'll move up significantly, but I just remember getting very lost in a lot of the visual elements to the point where the story stopped being interesting to me, and because it was so abstract from everything else. Now, DiCaprio delivers a stellar performance here. Every other actor involved, of course, is delivering a pretty solid performance. The concept is through the roof, fantastic, really interesting stuff. But I just don't love this movie as much as I love pretty much everything else on this list. It's a very cinematic experience. A movie that I wish I could go watch in a theater. I'm hoping it comes back for some kind of anniversary at some point. But certainly not my favorite of Nolan's work. Certainly a great movie, though, and belongs here on the list, I believe. At number 6 is the movie that I did not expect to enjoy nearly as much when I heard the concept of it, but that is going to be The Prestige. This is a very solid movie. Mainly what works so well about this movie is the way that Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale bounce off of each other. It's not really just about magicians and magic and how they play each other and trick each other, and Nolan cramming in as many plot twists as he can in a 2-hour runtime, but it's more about these two characters, these two very flawed men that are very jealous of each other, trying to constantly one-up each other for one reason or another. And that story is very compelling because it's very human. And unlike a lot of Nolan's movies where I feel like, not that he is the worst at writing women, but I feel like in a lot of his movies, the women characters don't have nearly as much of freedom as the male characters. Here, though, in The Prestige, I feel like everyone's pretty equal. The women who make genuine choices and do genuine things that alter the course of the story. And The Prestige takes that into account and really runs with it, that every character makes a difference, every character has a purpose, every character matters. And that's good because when you have the two lead actors bouncing off of each other so well, you have to give a reason for every other actor and actress to even be in the movie. And so you're having all of these ensemble characters that are doing a lot of work together. And as I mentioned, you have a lot of plot twists too. The twists are never ending in this movie. Whether it be this guy actually did this, but then he did this, and this happened, but this actually happened. There's just so many moving parts to it. And it all feels very fluid, and it never feels like it's ridiculous, and it never feels silly. And I like that. It's pretty cool. It's very fun. The ending is quite satisfying, even though it's very different and a huge twist, all things considered. I really appreciate the magic element of this movie. I really liked Now You See Me. Wasn't quite as fond of the two sequels, but I really enjoyed Now You See Me. So having this movie as quite a Now You See Me-esque movie with the magic and stuff, very cool. I enjoy magic movies, so keep giving me more of those. But this is a very solid movie. Definitely the next step up on this list, I would say. Coming in at number 5, and this movie is kind of tied with the movie I have at my number 4 slot, is going to be Oppenheimer. I saw this movie right after it came out on Blu-ray, I believe. I owned this movie. I don't think I owned it then, but right after it came out on something, I had rented or bought it at some point and watched it. I watched it on a home theater, not quite as exciting as the movie theater, I'm afraid, but I did watch this movie when it came out, and it's very good. Cillian Murphy is fantastic in this movie, and that's really all you need to know about it because he carries this movie on his shoulders from beginning to end. That being said, though, the grapple with humanity, the conversations, the character study of this movie is also grandiose while still being human in such a distinct way that only Nolan could do. And I think that's what makes this movie so great. I really like Oppenheimer. I also don't have a lot to say about this movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's a great movie. It is a movie that you need to watch. It's definitely makes sense that Nolan won Oscars for this movie. It's really good. So go watch Oppenheimer if you haven't seen it. Coming in at number 4 is a movie that I also did not expect to like nearly as much as I did. This movie is tied with Oppenheimer. I could swap these out pretty much any day of the week, and that is going to be Memento. This movie's really good. I really like Memento. I'm a huge sucker for detective thrillers and like kind of these dark psychological thrillers, I guess. Mulholland Drive is one of my favorite movies of all time. And while this doesn't have the same David Lynch dreamlike aesthetic as that, you still have that kind of mysterious thriller aspect to this movie. I really like Stay, the Ewan McGregor Ryan Gosling movie that's very similar to Mulholland Drive. So lots of movies in that kind of genre are in my wheelhouse. And Memento is no different. This movie astounded me. I like the concept of this amnesiac kind of civilian who thinks he's a detective, trying to solve the case of his murder, of his wife's murder, and all of these twists and turns get revealed to him, and people start using him and manipulating him to do different things because of his amnesia, and it just really works out well. Just the way the story plays out is very interesting. Obviously, it's very gritty, it's very dark. This is Nolan's first true feature-length film, so you're getting a lot of those old, gritty 2000s filmmaking techniques. But unlike something like Following that's very guerrilla, or something like Insomnia that feels a little too modern, this movie feels all too gritty and all too realistic. And it really plays on all of those strengths to tell its story in a compelling way. And this movie is dark. This is probably, I would say, Nolan's second, maybe third darkest movie in terms of the places that it goes with the script and what actually happens in it. And it all works. It works very well. I think this is a very good movie. This is just a very solid detective movie, very solid crime thriller, and it's one of my new favorites. So, Memento, number 4. After that, at number 3 is going to be the one, the only, The Dark Knight. What can I say about this movie? Heath Ledger's Joker is absolutely fantastic. Christian Bale's Batman, fantastic. Two-Face in this movie, fantastic. This movie pretty much hits every note and is pretty much a perfect superhero movie. Only thing I don't like about it is I still just don't think Maggie Gyllenhaal is very compelling as a counterpart to Bruce. It just doesn't really work. For me, at least. I just don't think Maggie Gyllenhaal and Christian Bale have very good chemistry. I just don't think their connection really works on screen. It's the only thing I don't like about this movie. It's the only thing that holds it back from being number 2, maybe. No, probably not. The other 2 movies on this list I like significantly more, but I still think this is a perfect movie. I gave this 5 stars. It's pretty much an unbeatable superhero movie. It's unbeatable. And what's crazy, though, is I actually do prefer the Matt Reeves Batman movie to this. I think The Batman is a better movie, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that I don't think The Dark Knight is perfect. I think 2 goats can coexist, and these 2 movies coexist. Everything about this movie is great. It's a solid movie. Gotta go watch The Dark Knight. I don't know how you've never watched it, but you gotta go watch it. Coming in at number 2, and the number 2 spot and the number 1 spot are so hard to decipher for me because I've only seen both of these movies once, but both of those times that I watched them, I was in awe. I was simply in awe. I thought they were the best movies I had ever seen in my whole life at some point. So it won't come as a shock when I say that at number 2 is going to be Interstellar. I mean, Interstellar is talked about pretty much to this day as one of the most classic movies of all time. There's nothing I can say in this part of the video to tell you why it's so good or why it's so bad that you haven't heard already, because it's just that movie. This is one of the most highest rated movies on Letterboxd. It's one of the most critically acclaimed movies ever in terms of, like, retrospect. I know when it came out, I don't think people were as big on it, but in retrospect, people really love this. I think it's probably the best sci-fi movie I've ever seen. Obviously, I haven't seen every sci-fi movie, so there's plenty that'll top it. It's not my favorite. I prefer Blade Runner 2049. Plenty of other movies I prefer in the sci-fi genre, but I do think it is, quality-wise, the best sci-fi movie I've ever seen in my life. Matthew McConaughey, fantastic. Visual effects are fantastic. This movie's pretty unbeatable in every regard, and yet somehow Nolan was able to beat it just this year, because coming in at number 1 is going to be The Odyssey. And I know that's probably a huge hot take because this movie just came out and Nolan has been doing this for over 20 years and it's really hard for me to just come in and say his newest one's the best one, but I genuinely do think The Odyssey is Nolan at the peak of his career. The Odyssey takes pretty much every single thing about every Nolan film and makes it great. It has all of the action elements of the Batman trilogy while having the humongous set pieces and flow and adventure scale of Interstellar, while still being distinctly very human and about the consequences of your actions, like Oppenheimer. It's got elements of Memento and Insomnia in its character work. It has elements of Inception in its grandiose nature. It has elements of Tenet in its very flowy action sequences that are so drastically different than anything else you've ever seen. And it has elements of The Prestige in characters that are able to bounce off of each other in a world that is visually distinct. This movie takes every single aspect of Nolan's career and simply enhances it to a level that is completely fucking perfect. This movie is a masterclass. This is the movie, The Odyssey, and I'm going to say this now, will not only probably win Best Picture at the 2027 Oscars, but this will be the movie that cinephiles in 20, 30, 40 years, when they say, what was the best movie of the 2020s, they will point out The Odyssey and say that it was not only the best movie of the 2020s, but it was the movie that genuinely impacted cinema and was genuinely the end of a cinematic era. This movie is absolutely astonishing from first frame to last, and even some of the decisions that I think maybe knock it down a few pegs to maybe a 9.8 out of 10 don't really make or break this movie. This is a fantastic film. It never stops to breathe. It lets you, it does let you stop to breathe, but it never does it when it's not necessary. The times that it lets you stop to breathe, you really feel like they were necessary because there's so much impact and so much weight in this movie. And it's perfect. I think this movie's fantastic. Just like Interstellar, I think Interstellar's perfect also. I think both of these movies coexist in a perfection state for Nolan at two different points of his career, mind you. I think Interstellar was the perfect culmination of Nolan's mixture of adventure and character work, and The Odyssey is a perfect mixture of Nolan's consequence and adventure point in his career. And that's it. That's going to do it. That's the Nolan ranking. This video is quite longer than I expected it to be, but damn, it was worth it. I hope you all enjoyed this ranking. If you don't know, I'm watching all these movies, and I make all these lists on Letterboxd, so if you want to check out the Nolan ranking or any other ranking before I even make a YouTube video on it, you can find it down on the Letterboxd in the description. I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.